Hey, what's up, guys? This is Ricky Towers. This is the first time that I'm actually probably going to do some React content here. What am I going to react to? Well, I've been following these guys' YouTube channel called The Golf Podcast. Great content. Was watching it and I was like, you know what? I got some fucking takes on this. I got some takes on this. And so we're going to tune into them and kind of chime in, react as we go along. So let's just jump right into it, okay? This video is titled "The PGA Tour has big problems on its hands." All right, let's jump into it.
At this point, there is no way to deny that professional golf is facing a reckoning. The Waste Management Phoenix Open was down 35% in viewership versus the year before. The Arnold Palmer Invitational, which is a signature event, was down 30% in viewership versus the prior year. And the Players, for its electric finish and everything that we saw happen there, Mike, it was down 15% from the year before. We've seen these every day. It seems like new numbers come in, just showing how much casual viewers, something that we've kind of talked about and warned here on the podcast, would be turning away from the game, very much appear to be doing so.
Okay, so let's first define me as a golfer. Who am I? Right? I'm a casual golfer. I'm a casual golfer. I'm a casual watcher. Right? Been playing for about 5 years from now. Been my best round is an 82, so I'm not super good golfer. I do go golf once a week, and I like to watch it when it's entertaining. Okay, I like to watch it when it's entertaining. And so when they're talking about the perspective of losing the audience of a casual golfer, I feel like I sit within that space. So let's keep walking through the video, and I'll jump back in again.
And here's the thing, it's not just like the answer is that viewers are now switching away from the PGA Tour and towards live. This is a problem across the board for professional golf. The Associated Press just reported this, and this is kind of really sheds light on the fact that it's not simply a switch from one league to the other. They said it's not like all those lost viewers have simply switched the channel to live. The upstart circuit, which so far has failed to land a major TV deal, leaving it far down the dial on the CW.
Okay. This is a kind of point that I have a little bit of contention with, right? This is a point that I have a little bit of contention with, and I'll tell you why, right? So the issue with this is that I feel like they're getting their TV ratings from the TV. That's it. And then they're using this kind of narrative to drive what is going on with golf. Now, my personal take on this is the fact that they actually have a lot more viewers tuning in on applications, right? So is because the fact that I'm watching a tournament on an app and not on the Golf Network, the CW, wherever it is on cable, does that mean that my view doesn't count anymore? Right? That's the kind of issue that I'm starting to have with this. So let's kind of keep jumping back into it, and then I'll cook on that some more.
Barely registers in ratings with viewership numbers generally in the low hundreds of thousands. So this is what we feared. We feared the idea that casual viewers are going to be put off by what has happened over the past year or two. And can golf be really saved at this point? So we're going to
Right. Like again, we're gonna jump back into the fact that what is let's take a bigger picture outside of golf on this. What is really the issue here? Well, A, cable cost money. B, an application is free. C, what's on cable? Commercials. I don't want to watch that. It is actually one of the biggest points in golf that I think is actually detracting from viewership on TV outside of whatever the actual content is the fact that, well, on an application, I could just keep watching. I can keep watching and I'm not going to get distracted by a commercial or a set of commercials that is equally as long as the amount of time that I just watch golf. It's actually crazy for me to think that I could just tune into a live broadcast and then all of a sudden I watched the whole entire tournament, never seen one commercial. What a crazy concept. It's like if the TV is going to turn something around, they're going to have to do it and be like, here's 1 hour of golf, here's 10 minutes of a commercial, right? I could relate to that more because what happens when the commercials come on? Now I got 10 minutes. I can go, I can go to my kitchen, I can make a snack, I can grab a drink, go to the bathroom, and I can come back and then I can tune into golf and I don't feel like I'm getting robbed of my time, right? This is more of a time value estimate that we're looking at. So let's jump back into it.
Talk about whether it can or not.
Okay.
Where do we lead from here?
That's the $1,000,000 question.
Yeah.
Right. What's concerning for me, I guess, is the ratings for the Masters weren't hot either. Right. I think they were down 20.
Also down 20%.
So I think that was an event where both tours came together. You would think ratings were equal or better, or just a little off, but 20%. I mean, come on.
Right.
It's because watching regular golf broadcasts is boring. It's so boring. I don't want to watch somebody walk down the fairway. I don't want to watch them set up for 10 minutes. You know, it's just something I don't want to watch. And if I can draw a parallel that's like a little more understanding of that, I don't know if any of you guys watch Red Zone, right? For football. What is that? It's play after play after play after play, right? And if I want to see something that's a little more detailed, I could go to a different source and actually get more invested in that game. But it's feeding me that sports dopamine that I want, right? My time is so limited that it's important for me to really, really get that out of the 4 hours that I want to watch something. Otherwise, you're committing a whole day to doing stuff, and almost half of that day is commercials. It sucks.
Right.
That tells me there's a problem.
And I think what the bigger indication of that was the Masters is, and one, I think it's almost a red herring in a way, and we're going to kind of dissect this. But where people are saying that the solution is that we've got to get the best players in the world back together, playing together. Well, arguably, you could say that the Masters was our first opportunity to do that, where we had, 13 players from Live come over, and we started.
It's not necessarily about the best players. It's about the most entertaining players, guys. It's about the most entertaining players.
To see the big names playing together again. But there, as you said, we also saw ratings drop. So golf.com, I pulled up an article. They looked into this. They said the similar type of thing. They said the bigger issue is that golf's ratings are now down across the board, even in events when the best players come together. The issue isn't as simple as the PGA Tour dealing with bad weather, and the solution isn't as simple as reuniting the game's best players more often. Pro golf seems to have lost more of its viewership base, and that is bad news.
Let me ask you this, though. Is it possible that they have a scheduling issue? Like, are we busier as people on weekend? Like, are just people not being able to tune in with what's happening in life? Or
Right. I like this point that he's bringing up is because the thing is, like, we have to value people's time, right? And for me, success is people's time that is worth the entertainment, right? When we get things like commercials or just like super boring gameplay. And what I mean by that is, like, if you remember watching the Masters, right? Graphically, it just feels super outdated. And B, it's like there's like these super small maybe exposés about somebody's life. Like I don't care about that. You know, I want to know something maybe a little more about their game, how they strike the ball, the things that they're good at. Something that when I ingest that content, I don't find out more about that person, but more about how maybe I can be a better golfer, something that I can take to the course, something that I can chat about with my friends at work. Things like that would make me a lot more invested. And instead, we're just watching somebody walk down the fairway.
Or no, like prove me wrong there. I don't know. Has life always been the same for year after year, past decades? I don't know.
There is definitely some truth sitting in that because,
You and I can't watch golf on the weekends with everything we've got going.
well, what we've seen is, and I don't feel like my viewership has changed too much. I will still put it on Sunday on the television. I will, however, say that the other rounds, Thursday through Saturday, I am migrating more towards streaming.
Yep.
Now, do I believe that 20% dip that we saw in the Masters viewership, that 20% of the people moved over to the app and just weren't accounted for there? I don't think it was that significant.
Right. And let me tell you what, I actually do think that it is. Right? It's like, as somebody who doesn't want to pay for cable, why would I do that instead of just go watch something for free? It makes no sense. It literally makes no sense.
I think a lot of people, and you guys let us know, what's your viewership kind of tendencies? Let us know in the
Yeah,
comments
I'd
of
like
how
to.
you do it. But for me, the app is a fantastic way for me to stay in touch when I'm away from my television for briefer periods of time. I am not opening up my iPhone and sitting and watching, the Masters for hours there.
Right.
I'll pop it open when I have to run outside and walk the dog for a few minutes. When I'm at my kid's ball game and I want to, kind of keep up to date with what's going on. But that's not the same viewership as sitting there in front of it. For me at least, and again, I don't characterize myself as a casual viewer.
Yeah,
I'm a
right.
much more invested viewer. For me, every opportunity I get, I sit down in front of a television and put it on there.
Right. And like you said, and you're not like, if you want to find out how Scotty's doing at the RBC Heritage, you're not at a softball game. You're not flipping that thing into landscape mode and putting on live TV and watching it. You're probably just checking the leaderboard. Right?
Yes, and that in that way, that viewership hasn't really changed for me.
hasn't.
I will when I'm
See, that's the thing that I think is maybe a little bit different. I don't know if it's like a generational thing, but like for me, that's the way that I actually want to consume the content. I want to be able to take my phone and freely roam around and just do whatever I feel like doing, and oftentimes that's me being at work, having it on the side, being on the golf course, having it in my pocket so I can listen to it, eating a meal at the clubhouse, sitting on the porch where there's sun and I don't have a TV out there, right? This is the kind of thing that I think they're actually kind of underestimating here, and they are bringing up good points, right? I love their podcast, but it's just a little base for me.
tied up, I'm casually checking in.
Yes.
But
But you're
then
not watching.
when I get home, I'm putting it on.
Okay.
Saturday, Sunday, I'm watching
Yeah,
the
but
thing.
Sunday primarily is your day.
If I'm home.
If you're home.
Yeah. Again, my viewership hasn't changed. I'll watch the Saturday and Sunday rounds as often as I could possibly have. the ability.
And right now, I don't think where we are in the season is even conflicting with anything major in other sports. There's no
Right. So getting back to
World
with a point
Series
that you brought up, which I think is true, is that we are witnessing, and the reports are showing that there's been a decline in viewership of live sporting events across the board.
okay.
Okay. So but it's not enough to account for how much and how drastic
On TV.
we've seen in the game of golf. These numbers of 20, 30% being downturned is much more indicative to me of a bigger underlying problem that needs to be solved. And one thing that I want to dive into and really kind of wonder is Scotty Scheffler the person who's going to turn this around? Because undoubtedly, any sport, and golf has been evidence of this with Tiger Woods and others in the past, Jack Nicklaus, things like that. A star really needs to emerge in a lot of ways
Sure.
in order for you to get the real attachment of fans and the real driving. At the end of the day,
no doubt. 2 years
sports
ago,
is
Scotty
driven
Scheffler-
by our stars.
Absolutely. No one knew who Scotty Scheffler was about 2 to 3 years ago. Well, not a lot of people.
And my question is this: if sports is driven by stars, is Scotty, with his incredible play,
Mhm.
the person to do it? But even more so, this: if we're going to put the weight on Scotty's back of being our hero, can he really be a hero without a villain? And just generally, like, it's just an existential question: can a
Okay, so there's a couple things to unpack here. So first, who is the star on the PGA right now? Well, to be honest, it doesn't feel like anybody, right? And the thing is that I think consumers of golf want to see somebody that's entertaining. Scotty is the best player on the planet right now, for sure. But it's just kind of boring. And that's not a knock on his gameplay. Maybe this is like a broadcasting thing, but it's so predictable that there feels like there's no emotional investment in this. And now to their second point, the villain, right? The villain component, right? This kind of needing this back and forth between two players to make something exciting, to be, like Brooks and Bryson, to be like, I'm team Bryson, I'm team Brooks. And now you have like a reason to watch because you want to see somebody be better than somebody else, right? And that's like a regardless of a score thing. You get that point, you could almost care less about who is actually playing the game and or who's scoring really well, and you're more invested in who is playing the game, right? So let's let them cook for a little bit.
Hero exist without a villain. And I want to break that apart in a few minutes. I want to talk about it because you could arguably make the case that the villains have left the building.
Sure.
Easily. By going to live and moving over there, and think about the names, who and I'm not calling these people villain in real lives, but I'm saying the role that they play
and stir the pot,
and who have in the past have been the counterpoints.
Right. The villains entirely have turned, instead of a personal rivalry, it's just literally PGA and live golf. And the thing is that those people aren't playing all the time, and so that rivalry doesn't have time to marinate within the player's mind. So people have already made up their decisions, and now they're supporting their players. So
to some of the more squeaky clean hero roles, right? So Bryson DeChambeau, Bubba Watson, and you could arguably put 100%. Him in that way. Patrick Reed, Brooks Koepka. Yeah. These are the guys who were the villains that we loved.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
And in that way. But the animosity between the two still retains. And this is evidence that the players are very aware of the ratings issue. Mm-hmm. So we're wondering what some of the players had to say about it. One, case in point, Ian Poulter, who could also kind of classify under one of those guys, villains we love to hate. Mind, yep. And we're saying that from our side because he was always the villain, in the Ryder Cups and the U.S. team.
Sure, no doubt.
He did a lot of damage to our U.S. teams, and he was the villain there. But it made for fantastic television, right? To have that,
no doubt.
So, obviously he shares a nickname with JT Poston, the Postman. Ian Poulter because the Postman delivers. Okay. So in the early rounds of the RBC this week, you had JT Poston was in the lead.
Yep.
And a fan had put the question to Ian Poulter saying, there's only one Postman, right? To Ian Poulter. And Poulter responded saying, if it helps their ratings, they can borrow it for now. So taking a very, opportunist spot there to take a shot at the ratings.
Do you think live guys are rooting that the ratings go down in a way? Validates their decision and all that, or
it's tough to say, because I think
that question is kind of based a little bit for sure. It's like the thing is all these guys want to see the sport succeed, but I feel like they actually understand what's entertaining. Right. I think that's where we gotta kind of sit back and it's like, just poke the bear a little bit. Cause a little bit of drama that makes people want to be invested. Right. I'm more on that side.
Anyone in their right mind, if you are in the world of professional golf, to root against viewership in general is a bad idea. Mm-hmm. I think what they should all want is that there's viewership across the board on both sides, especially if they're really going to come together. But the reality is, and why I kind of prefaced by saying those quotes earlier, is that it would be more of a bragging point for the guys on Live to say like, haha, everyone's leaving PGA Tour to come watch us.
Right.
The reality is they're just not watching.
not.
They're not watching either tour.
Right.
And these are the real casual viewers.
Of course. And to your point before about can there be a hero?
See, again, this is where I start to actually wonder about like, well, maybe people are going over to Live, but the way that they're consuming the media is just different than the way that they're actually gathering metrics, right? So, this is one of the things, like I watched this a little earlier and I'm just like, I just don't quite agree with that. I don't quite agree with it.
Hero without a villain. I mean, there's a lot of guys on tour that are just like the Seinfeld line, like she's too good. They're too good.
Yeah.
They're too nice. They're too polite. They're too great of people.
Well,
And I think you need a little bit of sprinkle. I mean, think about the housewives on Bravo. If they just hugged and they were friends, no one would watch the show. They need the fighting and the yelling. I mean, that's what gains you back. I'm not saying we need guys on tour fighting and yelling, but I'll be honest, when Brooks and Bryson were bickering on tour, it was great TV. It was fun. It was entertaining. It was something different. It's like WrestleMania. Why do you think that thing has lasted so long?
right.
So,
And the reality is every week it seems like it's yet another feel-good story with Scotty Scheffler. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's fantastic, and I've
It's just boring.
enjoying watching and rooting him on. He's a great guy. He's an incredible how his dominance right now.
incredible. Unstoppable.
But like I said, can you ever achieve that true hero status without a villain, without something on the other side of that? So what are some of these other players saying, right? And now players are becoming more and more aware of it, and they're becoming aware of it because they're being asked the questions by reporters. Reporters are putting these ratings in their face and saying, it's dropping. What do you think? So recently, Peter Malnati, who also sits on the player advisory board, so he's an important voice there, he said, people are just sick of the narrative in golf about being about, contracts on Live, purses on the tour. They want to see sport. They want to see people who are the best in the world at what they do it at a high level, and celebrate that. Celebrate the athleticism, celebrate the achievement. So,
Right. There's component of that, right? But the entertainment factor, what defines entertainment, I think, is actually what the problem is here. It's like watching somebody be the best all the time isn't always entertaining, right? Watching somebody tell a story through a dynamic gameplay, that's exciting. I want to see somebody get up. I want to see somebody go down. I want to see a little bit of a struggle there because that's actually relatable. And that's what will bring you in to actually watch the content again.
he's saying that people are sick of it. We don't want to hear this anymore. And it's not something that all the blame can just be placed on the Live side either with the purses, because the PGA Tour has responded in kind by raising its purses, and not just raising their purses, but shouting it from the rooftops.
Yeah.
They're not quietly doing it.
Right. No.
Right. And again, I've said this countless episodes now on the podcast, because I continue to try to raise the alarm of this is where we're going. And this is the trouble that we're seeing, is you can't have these two things going in opposite directions. You can't have viewership and ratings going down and purses going up, and those purses being contingent upon sponsors. So now we're seeing sponsors dropping out.
Right. Well, that's a PGA problem. That's a PGA problem, not a Live problem, right? Because they actually need the money more so. Drop in the comments if you think I'm totally based there.
Of events. It would be a different story if you said to the sponsor, hey, I want you to be a sponsor of a signature event. Yep. You're going to get the most out. We're going to have this great field, and the ratings are going to be through the roof. But then you look at like the API. Now, as a sponsor, I've paid upwards of
there you go.
30% more this year to have 30% less viewership. Business standpoint, we're going in the opposite direction.
That doesn't work. So you think that their scramble right now to get these outside funds, these investors, is to avoid the snowball effect, that if you start losing ratings, you start losing sponsors, then all of a sudden you're down to 4 signature events. Right. Now everyone on tour is like,
What makes me worry that these reaching out for this funding, whether it comes from Strategic Sports Group, the PIF, whatever, instead of becoming a sound, kind of investment, at one point, does it become a bailout? Because
Mm.
now we
I'm gonna skip through a little bit of this stuff here.
can no longer make the case. And in a lot of ways, that's what I'm saying is that the confusion around schedules and who's playing where, it's just painting a bleak picture.
Do you think you can live with events being eliminated? Like, do you need golf week in and week out? Do you need the Zurich next week? Do you need the, as a fan?
Here, so a quick take on that, right? It's like the way that the PGA Tour events are structured right now, you cannot reliably know that you're going to see somebody at a certain time. That's the issue, right? In contrast, you got Live, and you know everyone's going to play the whole time, and your person's going to get coverage because they're playing the game. We don't deal with this stupid featured group thing. Watch some motherfucker tie their shoes while somebody else is actually doing something, right? Day one of the Masters, featured group, Bryson not in it, shoots the lowest round, gets not nearly the amount of coverage. And that's ridiculous, right? The best golfer of the day is not getting actual coverage. How based? How based? Absolutely cooked.
So what you're, basically saying is like
They had to
if something
lose.
was more scarce, would I be more ready to tune in when it's there?
Yep.
I don't know.
A little absence makes the heart grow fonder, right? I don't know, but I don't think it works.
I
in
don't think
sports.
so. I just don't. I think when you come to, again, I don't want to address this from the standpoint of me as a viewership case,
Right,
Because I'm not this important demographic that golf is losing, which is the casual viewer. I think for the casual viewer, more at bats is actually better. I think more weeks where there's fireworks and there's the best players playing together and there's storylines to be driven, that's when you start to see something.
I mean, one of my theories, just looking at the last 4 years from COVID, I think the boom of social media, like, think about it. Like, you can wake up on a Monday, open up Instagram, open up TikTok, maybe even open up, YouTube. You can find out who won. You can find out how they won in 3 minutes, 1 minute, 30 seconds. You know, I just think, like, if we're consuming some of our golf that way, that's definitely going to hurt ratings. Like,
No, I'm going to disagree, right? It's because the parallels that content on YouTube, Instagram, and social medias do that are short form content, right? It isn't any more of an insight into what actually happened during that time period, right? If there was content that was outside of that short form content, because it's like you could watch somebody hit all 18 shots of a golf round and it would be, less than a minute, and you will have gotten all of that, right? But maybe more insightful content, more of that kind of those little pieces that they do during Live. I think that's the kind of stuff that actually makes me want to be like, well, even though I know who won, I still want to go and see the broadcast because it's entertaining. Like, how did they hit in relation to other people? Why am I seeing that? Well, there's just tons of graphics. Like, people say Live is too noisy because there's stuff here, stuff over there. That's entertaining, right? You watch a PGA broadcast and it's like, oh man, like, it's just a stock ticker of scores on the bottom and you follow the same basically 5 or 6 people the whole time. It's just such a snooze fest, even if they're playing well.
I don't have to tune into the RBC, but I know this morning, I'll know who won, who came in second, what the player story was like. I get it.
But I don't know. To me, I don't feel like the accessibility of highlights is what was hurting here. Because think about it. You could go back 100 years ago. I could pick up the newspaper and read whether the Yankees won last night. That's, again, City winning.
Yeah.
Think about the number of people who are tuning in to watch Mahomes or Kelsey play, right? So does golf then have a star problem? And this is something that I just was reading the other day. Golf.com brought this up, and it was a fantastic point. They said Rory McIlroy hasn't won on the PGA Tour in 10 months. Jordan Spieth, Justin Thomas, Xander Schauffele, and Patrick Cantlay haven't won in 2 years. The rest of golf stars, they went on to say, Bryson, Rahm, Brooks, are spending most of the year playing on Live, a tour that in recent weeks has struggled to clip 200,000 average viewers on the CW.
on the CW. Like there they go again with these stats are just like it's crazy because they're driving a narrative that is totally non-inclusive of the fact that well, live just drawing in a younger crowd. Younger crowds consume media different. That's it. Like that's actually what's going on. And that's the kind of the issue that I have with this when they make these kind of comparisons. It's just not it's not accurate.
W per Nielsen. That, for the non-ratings inclined, is less than a third of the audience averaged by the WNBA last season on ABC.
Oh.
So you remove a guy like Rob.
Like that's a kind of like a clickbaity thing. This must be a hard thing when you have like a podcast that's as regular as this. Is that you're like, oh, like okay, like what a headline. I'm gonna talk about that in my. It's like, dude, like look into it a little more, have a little more perspective because it just a little sour, a little sour.
Rom, who was winning,
Mm-hmm.
right? There goes a star, goes over to live for whatever reasons. I mean, we've done countless episodes just on this, but
Sure.
the fact is, live is still fighting an uphill battle to get people watching, as evidenced by that.
no doubt.
And I get it. Depending on where you're listening to the show or watching the show, there's more viewership opportunities in Europe. There's streaming. There's ways you can get it, so you can make that argument. But let's stick to the problem that needs to be solved. And the reality is, like I said, the casual viewer. I don't believe that the casual viewer are the ones who are downloading the Live app and sitting there and watching it like that.
Right.
I'm talking
You're wrong. You're literally totally wrong. You're totally wrong.
about the people we need to continue to drive the general popularity of the sport, which is somebody who will flip on their television and they have a couple other sporting events to choose from and they choose this, right?
They're choosing it because of a star. I think you nailed it.
I think in a large part, that star driven.
You had Scheffler going Wyndham Clark. You had Abe again, who was hot at the Masters. I saw those names on the leaderboard. Like, all right, I'm staying around. You don't see those names, and you see 7 names you've never heard of. You might be moving on to sporting event number 2.
Right. And that's what a lot of people said. Some of the non-household names that had won early on tour. So what I'm driving at here and what we're kind of looking at is in order for a star to emerge and substitute in that word hero, I think there are a couple of components that are missing. I think the one component that's missing is the fact that we need a level kind of regularly occurring battlefield for our hero to emerge from. And I don't think that 4 at-bats, which is the 4 majors, which are right now the only time that the best.
And let's be real about those. Those are all invite only. It's super scuffed. That how that is. The whole thing is broken by this whole world ranking system not actually including everybody. So let's be real about that. This is kind of a shooting yourself in the foot kind of thing. But yeah, keep cooking.
Best players in the world all come together is enough to have someone rise to that stardom that we're talking about, right? Because I think what we need is to start with a baseline of finding a way that you can get the players on a regular basis coming together more often. Now, there are countless theories floating out there about what this is going to be, but we're all in the dark still with the agreement. Some people are saying that if the tours come together, then the best players on Live will be able to come over and play in the signature events. Whatever it may be, you got to get more than 4 occurrences per year where people are the best players in the world are all playing.
Yeah,
right?
definitely.
That's step 1.
And they're not all playing. They're really not all playing. Like, let's think about people that were formerly playing the Masters that weren't because they're on Live right now. Like players like Louis Oosthuizen. It just is. It's like super flawed to even say the fact that the best players in the world are actually gathering together. It just is. It's not accurate, and it's kind of weird to try and be taking metrics from that point of view. But that's just me.
1. Then I think step 2 is you have to get back to a natural. It's a tale as old as time. What makes a good story is a hero and a villain, right? And who's a hero and who's the villain may vary depending on the viewer.
Exactly.
Somebody might be my hero and your villain, or vice versa.
Phil versus Tiger all those years.
Right. But having top level players battling it out head to head, and having a little bit of that diversity of who, what the personalities are. Scotty Scheffler is an amazing golfer, and he's just a great, from everything I can derive from, a great, kind soul.
Yeah.
Right. But his interviews aren't exactly electric.
Right.
You can tell and I understand and I respect that, and I'll give him that. The last place he wanted to be after he won the Masters was there giving interviews, and he said that.
Yeah.
I just want to get home to my wife.
Right.
My wife's pregnant. I want to get home and see her.
Right.
Right. It's a feel-good story. It's not the best television necessarily.
Right. Totally.
Right. If you saw an interview like that ahead of a title fight, be like, yeah, I'm looking forward to fighting him, but like I got to get home. Whatever.
Yeah,
it's not. So what I'm saying is, as we get these guys back together and playing more, bring the villains back.
Yeah, totally.
Because in the reality is, what would you say is the closest thing we have to a villain right now? And by that I mean, who's even garners enough of an emotional response from viewers in one way or the other on the PGA Tour to even make you care enough to root against him?
I think right now Zach Johnson. Sorry.
See, the fact that that is actually the response that actually shows you what's actually going on is that nobody's really driving that narrative. It's just like, it feels like something coming out of an assembly line. It's like, here's a golfer, here's a result, here's a golfer, here's a result. Just not it for me, man.
Zach took it.
But
Yeah,
I
he
mean,
took
like,
it pretty hard.
You've been taking it hard lately.
But he's also
fans.
not playing on the PGA
He's
Tour
not really
week in and
playing.
week out.
I think if you had to label some of that, I think people are starting to dig more into the hood of JT and seeing like a little bit of love him, want to support him, hope he wins again, hate that he's struggling, versus the other side of the coin saying like, kind of glad he's been a little bit of arrogance.
And if anything, that might be a little bit of a fallout from the Netflix Full Swing documentary, where he was kind of put on that same side as Zach Johnson.
yeah.
People were
That
frustrated.
could be it.
But that was the closest we thought. Beyond that, maybe a Patrick Cantlay. I think about Hat.
All right, guys. Well, to be honest, this is like the part of the podcast where it starts to just, become a little less something that I actually want to react to. This is my first time doing this. So if you guys actually think that you enjoyed this, go ahead, drop a like, drop a comment. If you hated it, let me know what's going on. Maybe a sub too. And maybe we'll be making some more of these because, I'm a golfer. I watch a ton of golf content, and I think it's about time that I actually kind of start throwing my opinion out there a little more. So with that said, thank you guys. I appreciate it. We'll see you next time. All right. Peace.